Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast, brought to you by Rocket Agency. I'm your host, James Lawrence. Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast. I'm joined today with Simon Lee. Simon, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It is excellent to have you on. So Simon is one of the leading creative minds in Australian advertising. He's the Chief Creative Officer and partner at The Hallway. The Hallway has a well-earned reputation as one of Australia's top advertising agencies, working with brands like GWM, Google, Nova, Dexus, Stream Motion, Tourism Fiji, and many more. It was only last month that The Hallway won Ad Campaign of the Year, as well as Independent Agency of the Year at the 2022 B&T Awards. Simon, it's a great kind of story, The Hallway, and all the great work you've been doing over the recent years. And today we thought it would be great to have you onto the pod to discuss in much more detail the Ad Campaign of the Year that won that award, which was the Boys Do Cry campaign that it was conceived and has gone into market off the work of The Hallway and others. So let's get into it. So if we could just talk, I guess, start with how it came together and the different stakeholders that have kind of been involved.
Yeah, well, I hope you're all sitting comfortably because it's quite a long story. Campaigns like Boys Do Cry take a bit of time to bring out into the world, and so this specific story started, I think it was probably in about 2018, and I can't remember exactly how we came across these stats, but we were made aware of the horrifying reality that an average of 6 men in Australia take their own lives. And I was just flabbergasted by that statistic, to think that in this wonderful country that we live in Australia, that there's 6 men every day who feel so bad that they feel the only way is to take their own life. They don't actually want to continue. And so it was one of those moments for me where I felt very strongly that was unacceptable, and that we as creative people, that there must be something that we could do. It's then another thing altogether to actually do something about it. And so we started by really asking that question of why, why is it that men are taking their own lives? And through doing that, we surfaced another statistic, that is that men represent 75% of all suicides in Australia, but only 25% of the people who reach out for help for mental health issues are men. So you get this very clear sense there that there's a lot of guys who are doing it really tough, but they're not reaching out for help.
Getting help, yeah.
Which then prompts another question of why they're not getting help. And that's where it gets really very interesting, because you start to sort of realize, and there was a book that I read by the British artist Grayson Perry called The Fall of Man. And in that he talks about the ministry of masculinity, which is this sort of unspoken, unwritten series of male commandments, in a sense, that have dictated for generations the a sort of traditional mold of what it is to be a man. And those dictates include things like, real men don't talk about their feelings. They don't reach out for help when they need it. And perhaps the cornerstone of the dictates of traditional masculinity is that boys don't cry. And so it's then we kind of go, hang on, boys don't cry. Started to think about that, and they go, well, hang on, what if we took the Cure's iconic song Boys Don't Cry and transformed it to turn it into Boys Do Cry, which would be an anthem for a new mold of masculinity. So that was the spark of the idea, if you like. But then, from there you have an idea. It's then about kind of making that idea a reality. And so we started by rewriting the lyrics. In fact, I'd had some conversations with some good muso friends of mine from a company called Uncanny Valley. So Charlton Hill and Justin Shave over there. And I'd presented them just a one-pager of the idea, an outline of the idea, and said, hey guys, what do you think? And said, look, I think it's fantastic. We've got to do this. And I said to them, well, hey, we need to get these lyrics. Who's going to write them? And I was expecting Charlton, who's a pretty experienced singer-songwriter, to say, hey, I'll do it. And he's just sort of pointed at me and said, well, you're going to write them. Well, hang on, I've written some bad poetry in my time, and I've written a lot of TV ads and scripts, but I've never really kind of seriously written a song. I said, look, you know, this is coming from you. You've got to write it. So I did. I took the original as the framework, and then rewrote the lyrics to really be, as I say, an anthem for a new mold of masculinity, all about actually sharing your emotions and getting talking when the going gets tough. And then we recorded an acoustic demo of the song with Charlton.
Mm-hmm.
Had a meeting with the folks at Universal Music. They came into the agency. We played them the song. We told them what it was all about, and there were tears shed in that meeting. And they very kindly said that they would support this. But then, of course, they have a certain say, but the real person who could actually green light us being able to use the songs is Mr. Robert Smith of the Cure.
Yeah.
And so a few weeks went by where we knew that Robert, the great Robert Smith, was looking at our lyrics, and then the call came in one day, a few weeks later, to say, yeah, Robert Smith's on board.
Wow.
So it's, you know, go ahead, you can use the song. But we still, at that point, then we had a song that was approved and licensed and what have you, but we didn't have any money, and we knew that to really launch this as pointedly as possible, that we needed a film along with the song, a music video, as it were. And so by this point we're probably in 2019, and there was a long period, probably about the best part of a year, where I basically went around pitching this idea to all sorts of different people, from sporting bodies to not-for-profits to various sort of clients and people in our network. And the response was unanimously positive, in the sense that everyone could see the merit in the idea. But there's a big gap between seeing the merit in an idea and having the money to back it.
Yeah.
And so it was always a case of, it's great, but. And so sometimes the but would be, look, we're already supporting other charities. This doesn't align with our strategic objectives, or simply, I'd love to, but we just don't have any budget. Until ultimately, I had a colleague of mine arranged a meeting for us to talk with Unlimited. And it was Rachel Troy, who at the time was the chief operating officer at Unlimited, presented her the idea. She said, it's great, and it was no longer a but, it's great, and she said, and Gotcha for Life is one of our charities. I think it's a perfect match. You've got to meet them. And so next thing, I'm in a meeting room with Gus Warland and the producer of his documentary, Man Up, Jennifer Cummins, a lady called Jennifer Cummins, and pitched the idea to them. They loved it.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never met Gus before, but by the end of the meeting, we were hugging like long lost brothers,
wow.
crying and sharing our stories and what have you. And it transpired that Jennifer had a fantastic relationship with the University of Melbourne Centre for Mental Health, and that they actually had some government funding to create some content to drive positive impact around male mental health and do a study on it. And that's how we managed to fund the project. So,
oh, wow.
and then through Unlimited, we had Initiative come on board as the media partner, and through them, really the whole of the Australian media industry, we pitched it to them, and we had fantastic support from media owners to bring this thing into market. And so it was it was pretty much a year ago today, so in late November 2021, that finally this project that had been originally conceived in 2018 finally saw the light of day.
Amazing. That date a year ago, was that when the video was shot, or was that when it went into market?
That's when we went live. Yeah, so we went live in the November. We'd shot the video. I think we shot the video in about May 2021, and so that was with our production partners, Good Oil, and fantastic young director Tom Campbell, who came on board and brought his creative vision to it. And that was a hugely emotional day with lots of wonderful people coming together to shoot this very emotional piece of film.
I'd love it to talk about that for a few minutes, and I think for listeners to the pod, if you're not driving a car at the moment, pause the pod and jump across to YouTube. Boys Do Cry will bring it up. Is that right? So I think it's the first result when you do a search, and I think stop the pod and watch the video. It is, I think, highly emotional. I think it's fair to say. So I think it'd be really interesting to dig into where it was shot, how it all came to be, the actors, well, not actors, but just everything to do with the actual day.
Yeah. More than happy. I mean, that's a big part of the story of bringing this to life, because the actual kind of creative execution went through a number of different possible iterations. We started actually initially thinking maybe we would get together a sort of ensemble of Australian celebrities to come together and get some recording artists, and then even some sort of influential figures, male figures from the worlds of sport and what have you, and do that. And so we spoke to a few people, and there was a little bit of interest, but it wasn't really coming together as we'd have liked it to. And then we actually, and it was working with Tom from Good Oil, that we actually realized, you know what, for this to be as powerful as it can be, it actually just needs to be regular guys. And so it then came down to ensuring that we had a really diverse array of ages and cultural backgrounds and ethnicities, so that it really was representing everyone. And so that was the casting process was to really get a bunch of regular blokes of all backgrounds together to form this real men's choir. And that's what we got. And so this wasn't a bunch of people who sing together all of the time. They came together, and we first recorded the track in a studio, just the audio, a sort of a demo that we could have as a background track when we were shooting. And then we came together in Marrickville Town Hall. And so it was May 2021. And I remember the day. It was a beautiful day, beautiful sunny day. And I drove my car and I parked it on a side street not far from Marrickville Town Hall. And I was walking up the street. The choir, the guys were already in there rehearsing. And so I had this extraordinary realization that finally these words that I'd written, this idea that we'd had, was actually it was coming to fruition as I heard the sounds of the song echoing out of Marrickville Town Hall.
Amazing.
And I suppose the other important person who was part of that choir was Dallas. So Dallas Woods, who's he's an Indigenous Australian rapper from the Kimberley, and we'd had a conversation with him a few months before the shoot, and it was through his record label. And we told him about the idea, and basically, unfortunately, the Kimberley is one of the sort of suicide capitals of the world. And so Dallas has had far too much exposure to people in his community, friends, family members, affected by suicide. And so it was something that was very close to his heart. And so pretty much immediately when I told him about the idea, his words were, well, tell me where I need to be and when, and I'll be there. And so he then there was the question then of how do we integrate a rap into this sort of fairly pared back acoustic piano rendition of the song. But we gave him our lyrics and gave him a sort of piano track, and he went away and wrote the rap that you'll hear when you watch the music video or listen to the song. And when I received an email with those lyrics, it ends with the words, I wish I'd had that convo with my brothers in the sky, R.I.P. And even as I say those words now, I feel myself kind of tingle and tear up, because it was just so emotionally powerful. And so yeah, it was. I'm sort of eternally grateful to Dallas for being part of this journey, because I think that his words and his performance are hugely impactful.
Yeah, wow. And on the actual day, like how long did filming take? Was it kind of one shot and done? Was it multiple? It's like what can you tell us about
No,
the actual?
it was a pretty long shoot day, because you're sort of working mostly with people who've never been on camera before. Some of them, so there were guys who had been in choirs and what have you, and so the performance piece they were fairly comfortable with. But actually, getting them all to be a coherent bunch from a singing perspective was a little bit of a challenge. But we had great people as part of our crew who are very experienced in that space. And we also had Eddie Baru, who is the bearded chap that you see in the video, who is actually a pretty experienced actor. And he did an incredible job in really bringing that group together in a very authentic
Nice.
way. But one of the things that you'll see when you watch the video is there's an incredible vulnerability to the cast, to the guys, and that was again all credit to Tom and his first assistant and the crew, because we were really able to capture. I mean, the fact is, I think for most of us, if you're suddenly put into a town hall and asked to sing in front of a camera, it is uncomfortable, and then on top of that, the words that you are singing are encouraging vulnerability. They're the sorts of words that men traditionally aren't comfortable saying. And so I think, yeah, it was wonderful to be able to capture that, because in the film, the intent was to really get a sense initially of a reticence and a reluctance to kind of open up and express themselves. But then as they start to sing together and realize, hey, together we're changing this, it becomes a confident rallying cry to go, right, guys, we can change this. We can herald in a new era of a healthier and happier, more vulnerable masculinity.
But it definitely captures that, right? Like it's so raw at the beginning, and you feel it build as it moves through. I think like that was the intent, that it kind of was completely nailed, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's great to hear you say that, because that was absolutely the intent. But I suppose the other thing where we knew something special was happening when throughout the day there'd be different people who'd been involved in the project in different ways would come and sort of poke their heads in to have a look at what was going on at the shoot, and almost to a man, people would come in, hear what the guys were doing, and then you'd see them sort of, wiping a tear.
That's beautiful.
Sort of, it was, and so the sense of camaraderie between everyone that was there. I think we all knew that we were doing something important, and for us all as creative people, it was so beautiful, because we're using our sort of gift, our talent, or whatever you call it, our creativity, for good. And I think everyone found that to be hugely positive and pleasing experience.
And I kind of want to pause that point, so I do want to come back to it later on in the discussion. But I guess it'd be really interesting to hear about what the rollout has been like, how it's been received, where it's been seen, what the initial impact has been. Just if we could discuss that. Be awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we do discuss it, because unless the work is having impact, it's just pretty pictures and nice sounds that maybe an award jury likes or what have you. But that's not what it's about. This is about driving real change. And so there's a number of really compelling statistics from a results point of view. The first is a reach number, which is an absurdly large reach number in the region of 140 million people.
All from one idea.
And so we were originally, I mean, the core audience was Australia and Australian men, but as those numbers suggest, it pretty much went global, and we were receiving emails and social media messages from people all around the world. So we got messages from a psychology professor in Lisbon who was playing it to their students on first thing on Monday morning, going, right, I want to show that. There was a school in Germany who were asking for the lyrics because they wanted to perform it with their music class. There was people in South Africa getting in contact to sort of find out more about it all, and literally thousands of social media messages from people whose lives have been impacted by suicide, and people actually thanking us for doing that work and encouraging us to do more of it. And that was it was this both heartwarming and heartbreaking to hear some of those stories. And then in terms of impact, the University of Melbourne, as I said earlier, their Centre for Mental Health conducted a study with, I think it was about 500 men of varying ages, from sort of 15 to 80, something like that. And very encouragingly, the results of that survey was that over 51% of all guys who saw this film were more positively inclined to reach out for help when they saw it. So that's hugely encouraging, and it basically says to you, well, the more people see this film, the more positive impact we have. So it's a case of just getting eyeballs on it. And then I suppose still all of that's all well and good, but if we've not got demonstrable change, there's still work to be done. But if you look at the website stats, we've actually seen now over 40,000 men who have visited boysdocry.com.au have gone on to seek help through the links that are on that website.
That's
and
amazing.
So we know that if people are reaching out for help, that we're decreasing the sort of potential of them to go and think about or to do the unthinkable. And so it's hugely encouraging.
How did you go about promoting it?
Well, it was so both paid and earned. So it went out initially. The full sort of 3.5 minute music video was out on online platforms, so on YouTube and Vimeo, and what have you. There were then cut downs of that ran as TV commercials. So I think we had a 30 and a series of 15s. And then a whole bunch of out of home. And so the out of home was really great, really simple copy-led executions that were quite literally sort of rewriting these dictates of masculinity. So don't talk about your feelings became do talk about your feelings. All in line with boys don't cry becoming boys do cry. So that was very impactful. Radio was a big part of it as well. So we did a full radio ad break takeover where we ran the full 3.5 minutes of the song with the call to action, and then a bunch of shorter sort of 30-second radio as well. And then another interesting part of it was working with TikTok. So we sort of went out to the TikTok creator community, and there was a couple of people in particular who picked it up and ran with it, and that extended our reach massively. And then on top of that, both Gus and I were very active from a PR point of view, doing sort of radio, TV, whatever interviews. Anyone who wanted us to talk about it, we were there. We were there to talk about it.
How did it seed internationally?
It's a good question, because we didn't do anything intentional and perhaps in hindsight we should have, and that number might have even been bigger, but it just happened organically. I mean, it went out for the advertising community. It did get picked up by the Drum over in London and one of the big American sites. I can't remember whether it was Adweek or
I think it was Adweek. I think researching for this, I think I found an article on it.
Yeah, so they picked it up, and then from those it got into various sort of industry blogs and what have you. But how it got beyond that was just organic. mostly through social media.
Really amazing. Is it the thing you're most proud of, do you think, in your career to date?
There's a few. There's a bunch of things I've done that I am proud of. I think yes. In fact, I say I think yes. Yeah. It is the thing that I'm the most proud of, in the sense that it's with this fabulous team here at the Hallway coming together to do something with a really strong positive impact. And so I'm proud of the idea. I'm proud of the team, and that's the Hallway team and our partners that came together to do it, and super proud. I mean, Gus Warland said to me right at the beginning of the journey, he said, "Look, Simon, whatever happens, just know when you go to bed at night that you've made something that is going to be saving lives."
It's amazing, isn't it?
You can't really ask for much more than that. So yeah, very proud.
Have you had any feedback from Robert Smith?
I haven't, other than, well, actually, I say that I haven't. I think Robert is quite reclusive. But there were a couple of things. So in fact, I say no. Yes, I've indirectly had feedback. So when the film was sent over, because he actually had final sign off on the film, so that was again a nerve-wracking wait to see whether he'd like the film. And the feedback came back to say that he didn't just like it, he loved it. In fact, Universal have never had such a positive response to a piece of sync before. Wow. So that was fantastic. And then I suppose the ultimate compliment is that he actually retweeted. He actually tweeted the video and the campaign on his own socials.
That's brilliant.
I'll take that as a nod from the great man.
I think that sounds about right. I'd love to bring us back now to you're in Merrickville Town Hall, and a bunch of ad agency people and peripheral people have kind of come together, and everyone's getting emotional and kind of talking about using these skills and knowledge for good, which I think is kind of the second part to the conversation today, where I'd like to steer things is, advertisers, brands, responsibility around doing good. How do you feel about it? Discuss, Simon.
It's like
what's our role?
Well, I mean, I have quite a strong view on this, and the people who might have seen me speak at various things, or the odd article that I've kind of published in the trade media, and that I actually view every single media spot, every billboard, every radio spot, every TV spot as an opportunity to put something positive into the world. The world needs positive impact. Now, that doesn't always mean that I'm not saying that every one of these spots should be filled with not-for-profit work or for cause-related work, but I do believe that all of us, as brands, marketers, and their agencies, have got a responsibility to fill those spaces with positive work. At the very least, work that entertains or makes you think differently in a positive way, or at its best actually drives positive behavior that is for the good of us all.
I think the statistics that you presented at the beginning of the pod are shocking, right? And probably not all that surprising, sadly, in terms of just the stereotype of what it is to be a man, and to not be vulnerable and not open up, and to keep things kind of bottled up. What are your observations around how brands speak to men? Like, have things changed, or are we still presenting this kind of, or we're basically just doubling down on all the stereotypes and that we've kind of been dealing with for basically forever?
It's a really, really good question, and I think that we are starting to make some positive progress, but still, I would say that there's far too much of the stereotype of either dumb blokey bloke, which is, sorry to, I won't say sort of names, but the sort of gambling category in particular. It's just, if you watch that, you'd think that every bloke is an absolute moron. Like an ape.
Yeah.
On the one hand, and then on the other hand, you've got sort of the perfect ab guy with the perfect job, who's the go-getter, sort of Gillette kind of early 90s style advertising. You still see that. Now, I don't have a problem with that guy. I don't have a problem. There are some perfectly jawed, great ab chiseled sort of perfect go-getters. And there are some apes. But in the middle, there's a whole load of different, an incredible, wonderful diversity of people who identify as male in that whole spectrum. And so where we need to be working is ensuring that that full spectrum of masculinity is represented alongside ape and chiseled guy, because it's there's wondrous creative possibility and stories to be told of normal guys, and what normal actually means, which is actually wondrously diverse, and that's what we should be celebrating. And back to the point around responsibility. It's only been relatively recently in my life that I've realized the impact that advertising had on my perception of what it was to be a man. And so, I turn 50 next year. So I was a teenager in the late 80s, early 90s. And when I reflect back on it, the perception that I had of what masculinity was that Gillette thing. I remember the ads and wanting to be the Gordon Gekko style, Wall Street bloke, or just these ludicrously high achievers, or the hero. I remember an ad for Hero aftershave of a guy emerging from a fire clutching a puppy. And as a 13 or 14-year-old, you're going, oh my gosh, that's what it's all about. And it's ultimately hugely dangerous that you cannot live up to that.
Yeah, I think it reinforces an impossibility, right? Which then, if you bring it back to the beginning of the conversation, it's just heaping on expectations that are unrealistic, that just cripple, right?
Massive pressure to conform to that, because if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. And so I think, and I'm not sure how many of us in ad land and in marketing are really conscious of the responsibility that we have. I think it's far too easy to be able to say, oh, hey, it's just advertising. Well, you know what? Advertising is a significant part of the cultural landscape, and it's the cultural landscape that shapes our ideas of the world and how we should behave in it. So if we want to live in a healthy, happy, balanced world, then we've got a massive part to play in painting the picture of the world that we want to live in, because we are quite literally co-creating it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And it's not I don't think it's a conversation that really is happening or has happened typically, right? I think there's probably a wider awareness of the typical portrayal of what it is to be a woman in terms of body shape and body type, which thankfully, hopefully, is changing, right? But I think it probably isn't as often thought of as to what the Gillette perfect abs and perfect teeth kind of does to men as well, right? I think we kind of stand to gain a lot by having more realistic expectations on what it is to be normal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Simon, first of all, I think congratulations. Like, it's to have an idea, to feel passionate about something, to do good is ideal, but I think to actually tenaciously hunt it down and get it done, and to have that kind of reach, right, in terms of 125 million people when your target market was probably about 10 million Australian blokes isn't bad. I said earlier on in the pod to go to YouTube, but the website itself is a good place to direct listeners as well.
Yeah, boysdocry.com.au.
Yeah. So yeah, if you haven't listened or watched the video, I recommend you to do so. And Simon, where can we find you? guess what LinkedIn, website address, all that kind of stuff.
I'm actually not as active as I probably should be on social media, but you can find me. Just look for Simon Lee The Hallway on LinkedIn, or actually our website, thehallway.com.au.
Excellent.
And really keen and happy to hear from anyone who shares my passion for using creativity to drive positive impact in the world.
Awesome. Simon, thanks for spending your time with us on the Smarter Marketer podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, mate.